of boxcars in this example, how is it in motion? How can you make that claim that it is in motion?
But a question isn't a contradiction. You need to show me where my view entails.
No, it's a demonstration. Do you not understand that it's a demonstration?
Well, okay, are you just asking me how these things? Dude, are you just asking me how these things got started? Is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm asking you how you can make the claim that it's in motion, okay, if that causal chain is infinite.
Oh, I don't see the problem with this. Like one series, like proceed either being an antecedent like event and then a consequent event after it.
Okay, it's changing in relation to what? How about that? You're saying it's in motion, so it's changing in relation to something. Changing in relation to
this, in relation and to the event before it, right? Or the
okay, and that's changing.
But I understand that it's not intuitive, right?
Yeah,
but there's no.
I still don't see a contradiction.
Hold on. This is important. Very important. Okay, so it's changing in relation to the cause before it. Okay, but that's actually not what it's changing in relation to ultimately. You and I agree.
What does that mean?
It's actually changing into relation to is actually the car before it. But that's not actually what it's changing in relation to. So how can you say it's changing in relation to X and then say, but it's changing in relation to, but it's
this just like really
not changing in relation to X. If there is no terminus, if there is no X to change in ultimate X to change in relation to, there is no motion, and that's the contradiction.
Change is just going to be.
Saying P and not P is like a rhetorical tool. But when I give it to you, you have to just like.
I haven't seen a contradiction, man. Look. Change on the view is just that one step or one tick on the series. Dude, change on the view.
Tupac is low tier, bro.
This is a full-time job, man.
Yeah, listen. Change on the view is just that one event, right, is different than the other event, and they're going to be in an order. Okay, there will be
different how though. That's the contradiction. Different how? How can you say?
What do you mean different? Like there will be an
It's different in relation to what?
Different in relation to the event before it and after it. What do you mean?
But because that's not ultimately what it's in relation to, and
what does that mean? I already
because you say it's infinite. So even anytime you try to relate, you say in relation to any link on that chain, that ultimately isn't what it's changing in relation to because it's on a chain. Look, it's on a chain. It's dependent on the one before it, and the one before it, and the one before it.
When I say change, it's going to be different than the one before it and the one after it. What's the problem with that?
Yeah, but you're saying it's changing in relation to something. You already said.
Yeah, I just told you what it was in relation to. Why is that a problem?
It's relation to the one before it, but actually it's not in relation to that. It's in relation to the one before it or the one before it. Like ultimately.
What are you talking about, dude?
I'm saying that you keep postulating different links on this chain, but you know so when you say it's changing in relation to it, that actually can't be the case because there's links before it. So ultimately, if there is no ultimate thing, okay, to change in relation to, then there is no motion.
I don't know why you keep saying that. Look, here, imagine this. There's a number line, and there's an infinite
regress, dumbass.
It's an infinite regress, and that's common. You realize when your argument leads to an infinite regress, that historically means you have a bad argument.
That's just begging the question. Look, here's the view, dude. Just shut up. Here's the view. There's an infinite series. Each tick on the series, like you do in like grade school, right, has a prime number, and there are an infinite number of prime numbers. We're going to say these prime numbers are different from each one. Like one is different, right, than the next number, right? What's the problem with that?
The problem is your analogy isn't working because you're not talking about
things that have,
no, because you're not thinking of something that is your analogy is pointing to a number line, but numbers are abstract objects that have no causal effect.
Dude, it's just an analogy. Look, one is different than two, right?
If you pick a different analogy that has a causal effect, okay? Because when we're talking about like my analogy being a boxcar, we can stay on that one. I don't know why we have to move.
Look, each number, each real number,
the analogy is completely
each
different.
real number is an event, and the things that exist in that event have causal powers that are the cause of the thing.
Yeah, that's just restating the analogy, though. Do you see how that's not a different analogy?
Why is there incoherence in that? What's the contradiction?
But what I'm pointing out is why did we get away from that? Equally works. Like if what you're saying is the case, is how you're defining it in your worldview, then why did you move away from the locomotive example? Why couldn't you stick with that? Because the locomotion is an event.
Okay, because you seem to like apply like a beginning in that. I'm just saying there's an infinite series. Each event is the cause of the one that comes after it.
No, I'm not implying a beginning. I'm implying that the motion is ultimately given. Okay, that can be because like you can have gears, for example. There be an infinite number of gears, and they're all turning, but there is no thing that gives the motion. Okay, because if you keep saying that each gear is getting its motion from another gear, then ultimately you're not actually saying that a gear is getting a motion from anything, because there is no term.
That's not true. No, there's always
what is it getting it from?
Every gear gets its motion, or whatever you want, if you have to use that language, from the antecedent gear. What's the absurdity of that?
Because what is it getting its motion from?
The other one, anytime you ask...
The other one, but it's not ultimately, right?
Stop over talking. Look, when you pick any single gear on this infinite series, and you ask, where is it getting the motion from? It's always going to be the antecedent gear. What's the absurdity?
The absurdity is that you're not actually meaning that. You're saying that...
That's what I mean. You don't get to tell me what I mean.
No, because when you say it's the gear before it, that's actually not ultimately what it's getting its motion from.
What is ultimately getting its motion from, man?
Because the gear before it it doesn't have this existential inertia to move on its own. It's getting that from another gear and another gear.
And it goes like that.
So when you eliminate, it's not just about beginning and like time. It's about the fact that there is no tangible thing. Okay, that's giving it.
So what's the absurdity?
So you mean that like things work the way that everything works that we see it? Like everything that we see has an antecedent gear, and everything before that has an antecedent gear, and the way it can't work because it works in everything that we see, and you're just positing a necessity at the end of the chain that you have no evidence for.
The logic that you use is also positing the same exact
but where's
thing.
The contradiction?
So whose logical argument is not self-contradictory?
Where's the contradiction?
I gave you the contradiction.
Even though Craig says there's no contradiction in a
but it's not actually emotion.
Why is he good?
He was not listening.
William Lane Craig doesn't accept that infinite regress can happen in like reality, but can happen in respects to mathematical objects, which is why you went to
so he doesn't think
that's
there's
why your argument doesn't work, because you're positing some number line. But then you said no, the number line represents causal events, and it's like, okay, then we could have just stayed on the locomotion.
When I brought up the number line, I talked about all the real numbers. I was just talking about the change from the event. That's just what it changes. Now you moved to something else.
It could work in reality. It's like a cyclical model of the universe.
There's no one that holds. With respect to metaphysics, it doesn't hold to reality.
Okay, what's the argument?
It depends on the.
I gave you the argument because of the absurdity of your worldview. That's why it doesn't work.
How is it absurd? I don't think it's absurd. I think it's
all right. So we're just arguing in circles.
If the chain is infinite, there's no first cause, right? Without a first cause, she's basically saying that nothing in the chain can be the ultimate explanation for why the chain.
And nothing
That's
can
all that she's saying, bro.
And nothing can be in motion. Nothing can be in motion, which is just a type of
You're just claiming that.
So nothing can change in relation to. No, it's the absurdity. It's the entailment of what you said.
I don't think it's absurd. Who said
it's not just? It's not just that it can't be in motion. It can't do any kind of change. It can't do any kind of change, not just locomotion. Like that gear.
What's the argument?
Not just that the gear can't turn.
Look, you asked for the reason why one gear changed. I give you the answer every time.
You just keep saying, "What's the argument?"
What's the argument?
What's the argument? And if you're just going to keep doing that,
stalling. That's all he does is stall.
You're stalling the end.
Just listen. Anytime you ask,
clarity, like on mine and Tupac's view. Wise. We get it. We're all dumb, and you're the smartest person ever. We get it. We got you. Anyways. What Tupac and I, and like it kind of keeps getting alluded to, there's infinite series of events on a finite timeline, right? So we can keep pushing causes back on a finite timeline to a universe that has a beginning and have infinite causes all the way back, broke down through time. The same way that when you clap your hands, you cross infinite points every time you do it.
No, so that's an accidental series. That's not what we're talking about.
Finitism. Like
we're talking about
every finite cause explains the cause of the infinite causes in the causal line.
We are talking about a per se causal change too. Also, it's like so that response right there doesn't address the kind of causal change that we're talking about.
Are you can you concede there is no logical contradiction, please?
No, there is a logical contradiction. I gave it to you so many times.
Okay, what's the
logical contradiction?
You're not going to keep asking me what the contradiction is, and I'm just going to keep giving it to you. You haven't pointed out that it is.
Can I ask you so that it's not him asking you? Can I ask you so it's not him asking you? What's the contradiction?
The contradiction is that a thing is in motion, which basically, hold on, whoa, hold on. A thing is in motion, so that means it's changing in relation to something, okay? but that the motion is coming from the thing before it or the thing after it. But that actually isn't the case under the worldview. What?
Cashing out motion?
What do you mean, how am I cashing out motion? I
motion?
described it. It's change in relation to something. It's change in relation to something. It's a measurement of change in
relation to its antecedent. And then it's turtles all the way down, dude.
Yeah, I don't see the problem.
If it's a change in relation to its antecedent, then I don't see what the problem with Tupac's example is.
Because he can't actually say it's changing in relation to anything, because all of those things are changing in relation to other things.
So I understand it's not intuitive.
So the fact that it is changing is it contradicts it. It's like it is changing in relation to something, but there is actually no thing that it's changing. No one thing that it's changing in relation to.
I understand it's not intuitive to you, but there is no contradiction to what Tupac is saying. It's just going to be infinite.
That's just a claim, though. That's just a claim that there's no contradiction. He's actually addressing the contradiction.
I think you're just placing an argument on Tupac's posit and saying that
Tupac
he's
did
saying
agree
this,
to my
but
definition. He did.
I don't see where he agreed to your definition, or he wouldn't be asking what the contradiction is.
Yes, he did. He said, I agree that a thing is changing in relation to something. But what he said it was changing in relation to is not what he ultimately believes it's changing in relation to. He says that it's changing in relation to the gear before it and the gear example, or the thing before it on the causal chain. But ultimately he doesn't believe that, because the thing before it isn't like a fixed thing. It's also getting its change in relation to something before
What's
it.
the problem with that?
So there is no terminus, there is no single thing that it's changing in relation to, and so there is no motion.
Yeah, when you explain it that way, though, what you're doing is you're explaining that there is motion, like, because if causal finitism is applied, like I said before, if causal finitism is applied, then each cause explains the effect within the finite set, right? Which explains the motion in the infinite set. Do you have any idea like what infinites are? Like,
and it wouldn't do that, because again, just as I pointed out with his argument, it's not actually changing in relation to the thing before it. It's changing in relation to the thing before that, and the thing before that, and the thing before that, and ultimately there is no. If it's an infinite, like I don't think you guys are understanding what infinite means. It means that there is no actually ultimate thing that the things in the set are changing in relation to. And so what the heck is motion? How is a thing in motion? How can you say that?
Look, imagine that.
There's no fixed point to determine what a thing is changing in relation to.
Look, imagine
if the gear
all that
before
exists
it is also turning, then it's not changing in relation to that gear. It's changing in relation to something before it.
Imagine that all exists is a light switch or a light bulb, right? In one state, it's up. In another state, it's down. And that just goes on infinitely. Change is just the difference between one state and the next. And necessarily in the series, there will always be a change, because each state is either up or down. And it goes back and forth.
Difference in relation to
Why is that absurd?
Difference in relation to what?
The state before it and after it.
Yeah, exactly. So we're back to the same exact problem. That didn't actually add anything to it.
Are you familiar with the infinite counter?
What? No. If it's an analogy where it's in a causal effect series, then it's not going to work.
Yeah, the infinite counter just posits that, like, there's this infinite counter that's been counting, like, from infinity to a certain point, right? And we could say, like, on the number line, we could say, like, the negative. He's been counting the negative integers from infinity, and he's going to, like, -1, right? And when he reaches -1, the next placeholder or number in that causal set of series would be 0, right? 0 could represent like the present time, right? So when you're saying like the boxcars, right, and the boxcar is not moving, right, then I'm not understanding like how you're representing motion within the analogy of the boxcars, where like I'm representing like the reaching of present time, right, by reaching 0 in the infinite counter analogy, right? So
motion is changing.
Explain to me how you're saying like the motion, the motion. Are you saying like the boxcars aren't moving, or are you saying like the boxcars are in a stagnant state of infinity?
Okay. Yeah, I'm saying that motion is a change in relation to something. What you just described with the infinite counter analogy is a accidental causal series. That means that anytime the counter presses a button, like counts one up, that is a causally independent, that previous moment when he did that is causally independent, okay? But a per se causal series, which is, again, I keep telling you guys, we're only talking about per se causal series. Those are things that are happening simultaneously, okay, thus not causally independent. All right, so like when I clench my hand, that's not a causally independent event. It's got one of its causes is the muscle tendons flexing, and then the causes of the muscle tendons flexing is the simultaneous neuron activation. You know, it's like those links on the causal series chain are not independent. They are dependent on the other thing. And so, but the nature of dependency is like it's depending on something. But if the thing before it and the thing after it are both dependent as well, and they're both infinitely, the list itself is made up completely of dependent things, there's nothing for anything to depend on. And so just in a similar way to this locomotive, is like there is no change in relation to something, because the thing that he's naming is a thing that's dependent and changing in relation to something else. But ultimately, if you keep saying that, you've never actually said what a thing is changing in relation to. And that's as clear as I can make it.
Like a million times, there's always an antecedent and an event afterwards, right, of which it can be changing in relation to. And you haven't given any like coherent response to that. I don't know what else to say.
I did give you a coherent response. What is it changing in relation to? You keep pushing the question back because you're like, okay, it's the event before it in a per se causal series. Okay, that's what it's changing in relation to. But you also know that the event before it is dependent, so it actually can't be changing in relation to that thing.
Okay, why can't the gear before the other gear stand in for a change, where a change just means the difference between each gear? And that just goes on forever. What's the problem?
And that would be the same in the infinite like counter, like the number after and the number before, right, are in the set of the causal chain that one depends on the other. Like if there's no -3, right, then there can't be like a -2, and if there's no -2, there can't. So the infinite counter is counting in the negative line, and each number that comes after the number is causally related to the number before. Like I don't see, like it'd be the same thing with the gears. I mean, I don't understand what you're.
Okay, no, it's not the same thing, because the gears is a per se causal series and the counter is an accidental causal series. Those are two different types of causal series. What is being posited is the idea that a per se causal series can have causally, which is made up of causally dependent events, can have a difference between its like links, for example. So like when the gears are in motion, they're in simultaneous motion because it's a per se causal series. Okay, so if they're both in simultaneous motion doing the exact same like change in relation to something, okay, then they can't actually be the explanation for what they're changing, or they can't actually be the thing for each other to change in relation to, because they're both being acted on in the exact same way. So that's what I'm saying. Like it just ends up being a restatement in a different way. These aren't actually rebuttals. They haven't actually proved what a thing is changing in relation to. And so like, I don't know why we keep going in circles. Like my position is fixed. Like that's just, it's been the same. So I don't know how much more I can clarify.
Look,
like
you accept that on this infinite series, right? Each gear could be different than the one prior to it. You agree that's logically possible?
No, they don't. They aren't changing differently.
All right, let's imagine that every time there's a new gear, it just grows like a millimeter ad infinitum. What's the problem with that?
What do you mean? Like each new gear grows a millimeter? They're still rotating in the same way. Just because the size changes doesn't mean like.
Well, but they're different, right? Because they're different size.
No, they have the same motion. They have the same motion.
Okay, if they're turning clockwise, but the next gear is bigger or something, or it just grows. What's the problem with that?
Because it doesn't matter about the size of the gears. That's not how gears work.
Okay, but does the size?
They're all transferring power. Like the transfer is the same. The transfer itself.
It doesn't matter. Look, if you're talking about transfer of power, you're always going to get the power from the antecedent gear. What's the issue?
No, you can't get it from there because you admit the antecedent gear doesn't have its own power to give.
Okay, but it got it from the one prior to it, ad infinitum.
No, it didn't get it from the one prior to it.
What do you mean it didn't?
No, it didn't get it from the one given to it ultimately, because that.
What do you mean ultimately? Ultimately seems to imply like a beginning.
You're right. Your worldview.
Yeah, that's not the view. There is no beginning.
There's no beginning.
That is precisely what is so absurd about your.
Okay, what's the absurdity of there being no beginning?
Hold on. You think it's so absurd that I'm positing that there's like even if it's like infinite. For example.
I don't think it's absurd to posit a beginning. I think it's absurd that you think an infinite regress needs a beginning.
Hold on. So you laugh and you're like, that's exactly what I'm saying. There is no beginning. And you don't understand that you should be laughing at your own point. Because if there is no beginning, there is no thing that ultimately gives motion to the next thing. So how can any of them be changing in relation to a something?
Look, we're giving you a perfectly...
I demonstrated how your own worldview can't even account for that. I demonstrated to you that
every time you ask...
You admitted, hold on, did you not admit that gear 123 in the fucking series, okay? Gear 123 is getting its motion... You said it's getting its motion from the gear
122. Yeah.
But then you said, but not actually, because
I never said but not actually.
Gear 120. No, because gear 22 doesn't have that thing that property of motion to give.
Yeah, it does.
On its own.
Okay, why would it need it on its own? It got it from the one prior to it.
Yeah, because it got it from the one before it.
What do you mean? Why would it need it on it? It would need it on its.
Look, it has the momentum in that state on 122.
Yes, it has the momentum, but where's it getting momentum from? Where's it getting
121?
From? No, it's not actually getting it from moment. No, it's not.
What do you mean it's not actually? What does that mean?
What are you talking about?
You're giving practical causes, okay? I understand.
What is that, dude? I don't like this like mumbo jumbo Aristotelian gibberish. It's just
it's Aristotelian gibberish. Pretty much all of philosophy is Aristotelian.
Yeah, all philosophy is Aristotelian.
I think you guys are just talking past each other, right?
I don't think so. I think
I think he's adopting his metaphysics and then saying, "Well, look, it's incompatible with my view."
I'm saying that your own metaphysics contradicts itself.
Hold on. Let me explain why.
That motion exists.
So hold on. Morals and sorry, what's your name?
Morals and Markets.
Okay, morals and markets, right? So
have a nice day.
There are some